Morning, Ruby Kids. So today we're going to dive into our next reading mini lesson, which is how do illustrations contribute to a story? So this is going to remind you a lot of the previous lessons we've done about illustrations and visualizing our mental image, but today we're going to take it to the next level. So here's our learning objectives of what we hope to accomplish. So we're hoping that today we're going to be able to explain how a text illustrations contribute to a story, meaning how do the text illustrations help the story further? How does it help the reader? And what does the author do with the illustrations to help the reader understand it a little deeper? We're also going to use text evidence to answer questions about a text, meaning that we're going to dive into close reading questions. So when you get further along into elementary school, middle school, and high school, you're going to have to do short answer responses to really drive home your points. So when you take M-STEP in the future, it's going to be a big part of that, is how do you answer a question? How do you answer a question correctly? So we're going to go over that today. And you're going to be able to share and discuss ideas with a peer or a partner at home. So that's what we're going to start with and what we hope to accomplish. So I want you just to engage your thinking this morning, and I want you to think back to when we read The Tale of King Midas in class. So think way back. Now, if you don't remember King Midas, remember he was the king who would touch things and they would turn into gold. So think back to that text. And really, when we talked about that text, we looked at the pictures and the illustrations, and we talked about how the author used that picture to help us talk about the character traits of the characters and the actions. So right now, go ahead and click pause. I want you to talk to the person next to you. Maybe it's your mom or dad or your brother or sister or stuffed animal, and tell them what you remember about the story and the illustrations. So today we are going to continue exploring how illustrations help the author contribute to the story more by using that story we've been reading the past week called Rabbit and Coyote. So we're going to look closer at those illustrations in Rabbit and Coyote and be able to respond to a close reading question. All right, so here's the close reading question I'm telling you about. So this question is the type of question you may see on tests later on, and it really is a way that you have to write to respond to your reading, meaning that you are reading this question to help you understand the text further, and you're going to write down your thoughts about it. So let's look at this closely. So let's read that together now. And I'm going to actually mark some things that I think are important. All right, it says, review the illustrations on pages 12 through 16. So you can see these are pages that we're going to have to look very carefully at. How well do the illustrations match the mental image that you made of rabbit and coyote? So you have to excuse Mr. Obi, my marker's going all over the place here. So we're talking about how do the illustrations match those mental images or those pictures we made? So if you think back, we did the visualization lesson with Cinderella. We're doing right now the same thing. We're talking about those mental images that we created while reading and how does it match the pictures that are actually given to us? That's what this question's asking. It says, how well do they reflect the mood of the story? Now, when we're talking about the mood of the story, we're talking about the feeling of the story. So think about when you talk about your moods, like, are you happy? Are you sad? Are you scared? Are you nervous? Are you, excited? So we're talking about how do the pictures not only match our images in our mind, but we're talking about how do they match the mood of the story or the feeling of the story. So we're trying to answer these questions here in our text. So, oops, I went a little too far back. Now, remember, the text for close reading question that we're answering is how do the illustrations on pages 12 through 16. So let's take a look at those illustrations and that text. So one thing that really I was reflecting on as a reader is when we are reading about the rabbit and coyote, which is the really big questions. We're looking at the illustrations of the rabbit, but also the coyote. Well, I'm noticing that in the text here, it says the rabbit snuck into the farmer's garden. So when I'm hearing that the rabbit snuck, okay, that word snuck, when I first read this, it reminded me of someone who's sneaky. Okay. Now I also keep reading, and I'm just going to skim through this because we've read this before, and that's okay. It says, there he found an abundance of carrots. He grabbed a bunch to bring to his burrow. At dawn, the farmer woke up to find his garden half empty and the rabbit's footprints leading away. The farmer came up with an idea to catch the pesky little thief. Okay, so when in my head, I'm hearing that he snuck into the garden. I'm hearing that he's a pesky little thief. So in my mind, what I'm thinking of when I hear this rabbit is kind of like this evil burglar rabbit. Like I'm picturing someone maybe who's like twirling their whiskers, or I'm picturing someone who's being super untrustworthy or someone you can't really trust. And I'm really starting to think about just really a nasty looking rabbit. Now, I keep going through, and another thing that kind of stands out to me is another description about rabbit. And that other description of rabbit, okay, comes in about paragraph 7. So look here, it says, Rabbit figured the farmer was asleep and tried to shake him awake, but his paw stuck fast to the farmer. Rabbit, the biggest trickster in town, had been tricked. So now, not only am I thinking of him as a pesky little thief, a sneaky rabbit, but he's a trickster. So in my head, like I said, I'm really confirming that he is really not the greatest guy, not the greatest rabbit. So maybe that picture should reflect more of an angry rabbit, or a sneaky rabbit. So on this slide, illustrations in Rabbit and Coyote, I have two different sections. I have my visualization of the text here, and then I have this section over here. So my visualization of the text, that's just asking me to put down what did I think. So I put down those things that I talked to you about. I put that in the text, it says the rabbit is a pesky little town thief and the biggest trickster in town. Since the text says this, I thought the rabbit would look like an evil villain. I also thought he would look sneaky. Now, remember that our question was also about the mood. So what does that mood, or what did I think the mood was of the story? Okay, was it a happy story? Was it a silly story? Was it a sad story? Well, I thought the mood of the story seemed silly because there's lots of tricking going on, and Rabbit is even tricking Coyote at the end. So I thought it'd be kind of like this, like Looney Tune or like a cartoon-ish type of story. So that's what I thought the illustrations would look like. Okay. Now, don't forget, our main goal was we're talking about how do the images match the illustrations in the story. So now that I'm putting down what I thought my story was supposed to look like in my head, I need to go back and take a closer look at the actual illustrations of the text to see, okay, did they match what I thought it was going to look like? So let's take a look at those illustrations. I'm going to back out and you can kind of see here. So remember, I thought it was kind of be like a sneaky rabbit. But look really up and close, if we zoom in here, look at this rabbit. Does he look sneaky to you? No, he looks cute. He looks cuddly. And honestly, I remember the first time reading this story, I was thinking to myself, this rabbit's probably going to have something bad happen to him. I never really thought that he was the one stealing things. So I'm looking at the rabbit, and look how friendly he looks. He looks so excited. He's even talking here to the coyote, and the coyote looks very suspicious. I never would have thought that it really would have been the rabbit who tricked the coyote. I never thought of that. So the illustrations in the text really show me something way different than what I thought. Okay, so let's write that down. I'm going to look here and let's move this box. Delete that and let's take a look at it. So in this box, I'm going to put down what the illustrations show. And the first thing that I notice is that instead, the illustrations show a cute, innocent bunny rabbit, right? It doesn't really show, if you look here in my visualization, it doesn't show this evil villain bunny. It doesn't really show him being sneaky. It just shows him looking like an innocent bunny. Now, the mood changes in the story. So I thought it'd be silly, maybe this kind of like, Looney Tune where the farmer's chasing the rabbit in circles, being kind of silly. But the mood actually just shows me more of like, oh, it's like a happy, dreamy book. Okay, it's not really a silly story. So, does my mental image and the illustrations actually match? No, they don't. And so it's time to really start writing that answer down and writing down our thoughts about the text. And that's what's great about reading is because every time that you read something, you know, your mind changes and you're able to see, does what I think in my brain match what I'm reading on the text? And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So it's a great comprehension strategy. So let's write our answer. Now, a great way to write the best close reading answer you possibly could do is using what we call WRAP. Now, if you remember, we did this actually in class before we had all this time off. Okay, and so I'm re-putting that WRAP tool here to kind of help you. So WRAP is an acronym, meaning that each letter represents another thing you're supposed to do. So R is restate the question. So whenever you get a close reading question or a short answer question, you want to make sure that you restate the question right away in your answer. And that helps show the grandma or whoever's grading your paper what is being asked and that you understand it and you are trying to answer this best to your ability. Okay, the A stands for answer the question. So after you restate that question, you're going to answer that question, and that's going to share your opinion or what you think about the topic or your knowledge about the topic. And the last one is prove it. Okay, and so that P stands for prove you are right. So you have to include 2 or more details from the passage. And if you remembered from our objective, okay, our whole point was learning about how do we answer a text for close reading question with text evidence, meaning we have to have proof of that answer. We have to have details. So we're going to start writing that, and you're going to kind of do it with me. I'm going to do a lot of it. But then you're going to practice on your own. So make sure you're taking a look, okay? So before we even start writing, and as you can see, we're going to start typing it out here. I need to go back and I have to look at this close reading question again. Great readers go back and they reread those questions maybe 3 and 4 times, and that's okay. So remember, I had to review the illustrations on page 12 through 16. I had to talk about how well do the illustrations match the mental images you made of Rabbit and Coyote as you read the story. How well do they reflect the mood of the story? So this is a 2-part question. So let's go back to the close reading question. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on WRAP. So that R stands for restate the question. So I'm going to restate that right now. I'm going to start off with the best bonus words you can start with. In the text, rabbit and coyote. So this is really important because you are telling the reader of the answer of your question that you know what text this is coming from. It's helping them understand what you're reading. So in the text, rabbit and coyote, all I'm doing is I'm going to copy this sentence here. And I'm going to tweak it and take off that question part. So we need to talk about how the illustrations match the mental images of Rabbit and Coyote. So did our mental images of what I thought of Rabbit and Coyote, did that match to what the text showed me? It didn't. Remember, we talked about how different it was, and I have my proof here. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put that as my restating the question. So I'm going to put in the text, Rabbit and Coyote, my mental images did not match the illustrations in the story. So this is kind of going along with, it's kind of combining our restate the question and answer the question. And that's okay. But we want to make sure that we are conveying our answer and that question. So remember, our question was all about how well do illustrations match the mental images that we made in the story. So in our case, my mental images did not match the illustrations in the story. Now I'm going to go and jump down because I've answered it. I've restated the question. I'm going to prove it with 2 examples. Okay, and if you ever need help, go back to this poster. It gives you extra details on how you're supposed to answer it. Okay, so I have to prove my point about how it didn't match. So because I wrote up here, I'm going to go back and look at how it didn't match. So it says here, pesky little town thief. Did that come exactly from my book? Yes, it did, and that's in quotation marks. And the biggest trickster in town. That came exactly from the text. So I'm going to take that and talk about how I thought he would look like an evil villain. So I'm going to type that out right now. So I'm going to start off by saying, my mental image of Rabbit was way different than the illustrations. In the text, it says that Rabbit is a pesky little town thief and the biggest trickster in town. Now, if you notice, oops, that's spelled incorrectly, so just right-clicked it, so that way it's spelled correctly. I put these in quotations because that lets my reader know that I took that exactly from the text. So make sure if you are taking that text evidence, which you should be, and putting it in your answer, you want to make sure you put those in quotation marks. It was actually taken from your book. Okay, so it says, I'm going to go back and reread this. It says, in the text, it says that Rabbit is a pesky little town thief and the biggest trickster in town. I thought he would be extremely sneaky looking rabbit, but in the illustrations, he looks innocent and cute. So does that tell you a difference between my mental image and the illustrations? Let's look back up the question. Let's double check. Okay, how well do the illustrations match the mental images of the rabbit and coyote as you read the story? How well do they reflect the mood of the story? So now we need to not only, remember we're doing 2 examples. So we've done the example of rabbit, but now we need to talk about the mood of the story. Okay, so because it's in the question. So I'm going to restate that question again, because remember, I'm going back to that wrap. This is a 2-part question, so you need to do your second part. So I'm going to start restating the question. I'm going to say the illustrations also change the mood of the story. Okay, so did I restate the question? Yes, now I need to do the A in wrap, which is answer the question. So I'm going to state, since Rabbit is always tricking Coyote, the text reminded me of a silly cartoon, right? We talked about how it reminded Miss Ruby of like those Looney Tunes or the cartoons where the farmer would be chasing the rabbit and the rabbit would probably do something silly. So I'm explaining the mood, how it's changed. Okay. So I'm going to say, now the illustrations create a happy, dreamier mood. Okay. So did I answer the question? Yeah. Did I provide evidence by saying Rabbit is tricking Coyote? Is that within our text? Yeah. Now, the illustrations create a happy, dreamier mood with the rabbit and Coyote seeming like friends. Okay, and I'm using my illustrations, like especially here on the last page, or this page here on page 15, Rabbit and Coyote, they don't seem to be doing anything silly. They just seem like they're hanging out and they're being friends. So I'm using that evidence from the text in that last question. So right away, I've used this wrap tool to really go above and beyond and answer my text for close reading question. Now, what I would also do is I would go back and reread and make sure this makes sense. So I'm going to do that right now. In the text Rabbit and Coyote, the illustrations do not match my mental images I created of the story. So I got my restate the question and my answer, right? All packed into one sentence there. In the text, Rabbit is described as a pesky little thief and the biggest trickster in town. Do I have evidence from my text here? Yes, awesome. This made me form a mental image of a nasty, sneaky looking rabbit. However, in the illustrations, the rabbit looks like a cute, innocent bunny rabbit. The illustration also seems to change the mood of the story. Since Rabbit is always tricking Coyote, the text creates a silly mood, but the illustrations create a dreamier, happy mood. This is why my mental images do not match the text. Perfect. So we have our guiding close reading question here that we have answered, and it seems to make 100% sense to what we were talking about. All right, guys, so since you have watched me kind of walk you through how did I answer this text for close reading question, I want you to give it a shot. Now, I know you may not be perfect at that, but that's okay. We're going to be practicing these types of questions for the next couple of mini lessons. So it's okay. We're going to continue to practice and restate those questions, and that's how we're going to get better. So we're going to go to independent practice time now. So what's going to happen is on slides 9 through the rest of the presentation, you're actually going to go and you're going to edit the slides for us. So you are going to complete the slides on the next page, and hopefully they're going to look very familiar if you watched this video. So you can see that here's your close reading question of what I would like for you to try to answer. So it says, review the illustrations in a book you chose at home. So pick any book you want. Hopefully it's some book with illustrations though. How well do the illustrations match the mental images you made of the characters as you read the story? So exactly what we did with Rabbit and Coyote, but now you're going to try it on your own. So did those illustrations match your mental picture? How well do they reflect the mood of the story? So remember, mood of the story is how is the feeling of the story? Is it a sad story? Is it a scary story? Is it exciting? Is it silly? What do you think the mood of the story would be? Just like your moods of your personality. So here on this slide, you're going to do exactly what I showed you. You're going to do your visualization on one side. So what did you actually picture in your mind while you were reading? So I want you to try to add 2 mental images. So try to add 2 pictures of something that you thought. And make sure you're talking about mood of the story too. So you're talking about your mental image of your characters, but also how did you feel about the mood of the story? Now over here on this side, it's what the illustrations show you. So what did that picture actually look like? And what was the mood based on your illustration? So you're going to fill out this organizer, and this is going to help you answer the question. And here, you're going to type out your question, and you're going to put it into this slide. So if you look here at the presentation, you'll have to type it out here below. So one thing I want to highly encourage you, if you need to go back to your text, please go back to your text. Also, if you need to go and remember the wrap strategy, just scroll up and look at that slide. It'll help you make sure. So I'm going to be looking to make sure you are using that wrap and give you some feedback on it to kind of help you answer those questions like a big, great 4th grader, because you're actually going to be a 4th grader here soon. All right, guys. Well, good luck today. Hopefully you have a great reading mini lesson. And as always, if you need anything, just call, text, email. Mr. Roby will be here. All right, guys. Have a great day.